Protests in Lebanon have grown into massive numbers and spiraled into violence at times as people demand the resignation of the government. They accuse their leaders of looting and bankrupting the country, which is in a severe economic crisis. The latest protests were triggered by new taxes, including a fee to use WhatsApp. That was scrapped, but people are still out on the streets. The Prime Minister, Saad al-Hariri, has cancelled Friday's cabinet meeting and is due to address the nation shortly. Let's speak to Habib Battah. He's an investigative journalist and blogger at Beirut Report. He's joining us from Beirut itself. Thanks very much for speaking to us. So as we wait to see what the Prime Minister has to say, perhaps in a couple of minutes' time, Habib, I know that you've been out and about on the streets of Beirut. You've been seeing what's going on. Just give us a sense of what you've seen and heard today.
I mean, it's an extraordinary scene on the streets of Beirut. Just to get to the studio today, I had to go around maybe 20 fires, small fires, really big fires, tire burning, people just taking over the streets. I've never seen anything like that. Usually protests in Lebanon are in downtown in certain places. They're organized. These are completely people-led, it seems. There's no police around. There's no party flags. They're just blocking roads all over the country. And people are just walking in the streets, holding flags, chanting patriotic slogans, and lots of boys on scooters, just kind of really taking this chance to take over the streets. So there's, just droves and droves of scooters, young people who really don't have a part in this government, in this country, who don't have jobs, who don't have education, who are just fed up with the very miserable state of affairs in this country. It's very hard to live in Lebanon. Without electricity, without water, with constant pollution, now they're raising taxes. People are feeling very squeezed, and this thing with the WhatsApp, putting a tax on WhatsApp was kind of the last straw because WhatsApp was the only thing working in the country, some people say, was one of the few things that, poor kids and regular folks in Lebanon, rely on for their entertainment, for their communication. And so, the government is seen as really overstepping.
And speaking of the government, as we wait for the Prime Minister to come out and speak, there are some demonstrators and some politicians as well, as you know, who are calling for his resignation. What do you expect him to say when he comes out? I mean, what are the options right now for Saad al-Hariri?
It's hard to say, we never know to predict what happens with Saad al-Hariri. So many interesting things have happened in the past with his speeches. So he's tried to resign in the past. Will he do that again? I think there might be some idea that there must be something to salvage here. I mean, Lebanon is a broken system. Lebanon's a very broken and chaotic state, but it can always get worse. And without any kind of alternative system, alternative political system in this country, you're leaving us with a complete and utter void. As I said, Lebanon is very chaotic, but it can always get more chaotic. And today what I saw on the streets, 18-year-old boys running the streets, do people want to have that or a corrupt government? It's a very tough call. I think he probably may try to stay on. He may try to assure people. He may try to offer some kind of boon to the public. But this is not the case as it is in many Arab countries where you have one leader, one rule. Saad al-Hariri is just one of many leaders who rule Lebanon. So if he resigns or not, it's kind of irrelevant.
And I know that you've certainly covered past protests in Lebanon, including the garbage crisis that took place a couple of years ago. Is there a comparison to be made here when you look at what's happening right now in Lebanon with these protests? Is the country sort of at a point of no return where people are just simply absolutely fed up?
Well, it's hard to say. We've reached many points of no return in the last 10 or 15 years in Lebanon. There's always been some kind of crisis happening. But the financial crisis right now, with some pressure on the Lebanese pound and fears that people will lose money, is kind of a new specter of drama in Lebanon. It does feel similar to the protests in 2015, 2016, but there's something different about it in that these happened so quickly. I mean, these were just, overnight, everything changed. It was a crazy, wild night of all-night protests. And I mean, it's almost a 24-hour protest. It really hasn't even had a break. So the intensity, the anger on the streets is definitely a bit more, and also they're much more widespread this time. As I said, every small street in Lebanon, you have to go around. I've had to go the opposite way. It's very chaotic. It feels like a complete vacuum of law. Even though we have very little law in Lebanon, it can always feel worse. Okay. And so cars driving the wrong way on the highway, People, it just seems like hospitals, you can't get to a hospital. They're all blocked. There's fires burning in front of hospitals. So people can't really move, within 10 blocks of their house in some places, or even less.
Okay, Habib Battah, we thank you very much for joining us from Beirut.